Have you figured out your niche? Are you helping adding value to other people's lives? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to Munira's Musings with your host, Munira Zahabi.
Greetings from Chicagoland. This is Munira, the Niche Navigator, coming to you live with another guest and another perspective on life. How are you, everybody? We had a wonderful weather this weekend in Chicagoland, and summer is here, so a lot of people will be out and about. Our guest today is Cristina Jordin. She's calling us all the way from Canada. Welcome to our show, Cristina.
Thank you so much, Munira. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. So this is a show where we bring on guests and we have them tell their story about their niches and what is it they do and how they do it and why they do it and what makes them wake up in the morning. And we want the same for our listeners. So if you are one of them, stand on the sidelines because here we go. Cristina, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, wonderful. Well, as you know, my name is Cristina, and I have 4 children, and I'm married, and that's part of my passion, of course, or, my kids get me up every morning. And the other part of my passion is behavior change. I've been in the field nearly 20 years, starting off as a clinician and then teaching graduate behavioral science for the past 12 years. However, a couple of years ago, I hired a coach, so to speak, a life and wellness coach. And it shifted so much for me. It shifted my perspective on things and how I operated in my daily life that I said, I want to support other people this way. And it really made sense because I've been supporting people in learning and cognition and behavior change for all this time. Why not look at it, from a perspective of how are we shifting in our brain and the neuroscience behind how we can change and actually live a happier life or a more productive life or, show up more confidently, whatever the case may be. So I got into that. I got into coaching. I went and got certified as a life and health coach. I then nearly a year ago started doing something called Positive Intelligence, or working with a company called Positive Intelligence, training with them as a coach, which is essentially mental fitness. And mental fitness is simply defined as how do we look at things from a positive versus negative mindset, and that strength to do that. And I also, another part of my passion is I teach a course that originated at Stanford and in their MBA program, and it was called Creativity in Business, and it is outside of Stanford called the Creative Insight Journey. And it's all about not mental fitness, but mindfulness and emotional intelligence. And these are all intertwined. So the reason I am so incredibly passionate about this, as I have been about behavior change for many years, is that we all have the ability to live a better life, to be happier, to perform better, to show up, to reduce our stress, reduce our anxiety, be present in our lives and really live. So I want to support others do that. I saw myself make that shift a couple of years ago. Munira, I've been practicing meditation about 20 years. Now, not consistently for 20 years. And it did. When I started doing it, it supported me in the moment. It supported me with stress. But it wasn't until I started to understand how to shift how I think and shift my perspective on things that I could see this overarching effect, and how if I do it consistently, how I'm going to build that muscle and build that muscle. So I am here to spread the word. It's like anything. When you find something that works and support other people, you don't want to keep it a secret. You want to share it and you want to support others grow.
Thank you so much for sharing that. But now my curiosity peaks, because what I want to know is, what is behavioral change? And why is this your passion? Why did you get into this learning, if you will? Because you started out, you said, as a teacher, or you're somebody who was teaching that, and then you just went and expanded on that. But why in that field? What triggers your interest?
Absolutely. Okay, so what triggered my interest was, oh my goodness. Oh, there's so many reasons behind this. But to bring it to present day and how I'm supporting people is that many of us know what to do. Many of us know even how to do it. However, many of us don't sustain our habit change. You know, we'll start a diet, but we won't stick to it. We'll start getting up early in the morning, but we won't stick to it. We'll start, you know, a new routine of any sort, but we don't stick to it. So I really wanted to understand, well, what's happening when we change? What happens, you know, when our behavior changes? Because I had always been working in the field of building curriculum and teaching people how to change their behaviors externally. So not necessarily their thought patterns, but their behaviors externally in such a tiny fashion, using methods of applied behavior analysis, that almost anyone could learn anything. So I started thinking, well, internally, how does that work? How do we change our habits? And I really got interested in that, hence started studying and moving in that direction. So what is behavior change? Essentially, the best way for me to answer that is how essentially do we shift anything that we want to do? How do we shift in, and I'll think now internal behaviors that other people don't see. How do we shift from, here's an example I hear from many, many, many people. You know, we'll have a conversation like you and I are talking right now. And after the conversation's over, I might rerun over and over in my head what I said. Did I say it right? Are people going to think this? Are people going to think that? And we'll ruminate on these things. So how do we change that from showing up confidently, leaving that conversation, being present and saying, you know, it's perfect as it is. I did a great job. I can reflect on it and maybe learn from those experiences, but I don't have to ruminate and worry about them. So that would be one shift of
You're talking about self-doubt.
Oh, yeah, that's part of it.
Eliminating self-doubt.
Yes.
So when you say you are teaching people how to take little steps, is it just internally, or do we do things outside? Like, do we write something down, or what happens when, how do we implement those little changes?
I'm glad you asked. Okay, so in the context of the coaching I do, for example, and I use this positive intelligence framework, and the reason I love it is because it's implemented very simply. And when we do things in small steps and simply, we're far less to reject it, meaning our subconscious isn't going to look at that and say, oh, change, I'm scared, I don't want to do it. Hence, we end up self-sabotaging. So with this particular program, what we do is I teach my clients, number one, they take an assessment to see, you know, like a personality assessment to see how do I self-sabotage. You know, we all judge, all of us judge ourselves, we judge others, we judge circumstances, but we're all different as human beings. So some of us may avoid things more. Some of us may be more controlling. Some of us may be more perfectionistic or, you know, very hyper-achieving in a way that is detrimental to our well-being. So we first learn about, you know, how is it that I self-sabotage, or, you know, how does that work for me? Then we go into, well, how do we shift and intercept that and stop that and look at things from a different framework? And in positive intelligence, we look at that as a SAGE perspective. You know, how do we start to get curious and empathize and innovate and navigate and explore? But the small bits is what the brain that's where the mental fitness comes in, and the brain building, how we're building our core muscle. So with positive intelligence, what we do, as opposed to, I'm going to take a step back. I'll go forward actually. So what we do is every single day, you're going to do mental fitness exercise, which is building that core muscle. But as opposed to some people who say, okay, well, you know, I'm going to go to the gym for an hour, which may inhibit people because they're like, an hour, I don't have time. I don't have enough time. You know, you get a 2-minute message right from an app that comes right to you in the morning, and you can set that time to the time you wake up, or, you know, you can accommodate your schedule. Then 3 times throughout the day, you get a 2-minute, you know, mental fitness challenge. And then we have an app with a brain gym on it. And then for another 6 minutes or so a day, as you choose to accommodate your schedule, even in 2-minute increments, you go in and do these mental fitness exercises. So in as little as 15 minutes a day, over 8 weeks, you can actually see a shift in an MRI scan of how the gray matter shifts from your saboteur part of your brain, let's say, to the SAGE part of your brain. So that's what we mean by the little steps. You're only presenting this in 2-minute increments over 15 minutes a day. When you look at that, that's about 1.5% of your day that can fit into almost anyone's schedule. And that's what I mean about small steps. So we're not saying, here, you need to do all of this now and all of this change and these big, big shifts. We're going to start little.
So I understand what you're saying. Everything that you've said is perfect. However, why do we self-sabotage? Where does that stem from?
Oh, that's a big question. Well, we all do,
because
right?
everybody's doing it. I mean,
That's
here
right.
I am, a niche coach, and help people finding whatever. It's the path. Like you said, they know what they want to do. They know how they want to do it, but they don't take the first step. They stand on the sidelines and not wait to dip their feet in the water.
That's right. So I'm going to answer this the best way I can, and at least maybe provide some insight on it. So, many people will talk about, well, as a child, maybe you're said something and then that, that sticks with you and you build your own story. So part of that is true, but we're also born genetically predisposed. So some people are genetically more predisposed to be high achievers, or genetically predisposed to be, more anxious or more controlling. So some of it we're born with, those tendencies, I'm going to say, because we can steer these tendencies. And then the other part of it is when we are young and before, our rational abilities is formed in our brain, we will make up stories. So what do I mean by that? An example would be, let's say, and this doesn't have to be from, severe trauma or anything, but let's just say I have, my dad was a very much hyperachiever and he wasn't home very much. He was an entrepreneur and he was working and always out there building business. So I might tell a story that my dad doesn't love me enough because he doesn't spend time with me. Now, that was never the truth. My dad loved me to bits and pieces. But in my mind, I couldn't rationalize as a child, he's out there trying to provide for his family. That's why he's doing it. He really does love me. I'll make up that story and I'll believe that. And as things happen that we create our beliefs, they create like a superhighway in our brain of what we believe. We believe what we tell ourselves. So based on these beliefs, we end up self-sabotaging, and a big one, I'm sure, and, you hear this everywhere, is to do with self-worth. Many people don't feel like, I'm not worthy enough. I'll take this a step back. I try not to get too much into this, but, we have anywhere from about 6,000 to 60,000 thoughts a day, depending on what science you listen to. And so anywhere from 6,000 to 60,000 thoughts a day. And much science will tell us that majority of those thoughts are negative thoughts. And our mind is listening to us. So that's another root of where self-sabotage comes from. What are we telling ourselves? So the most powerful thing in the world, at least that I feel, and this is and I'm a huge advocate of this work, because that's why we need to shift what we're telling ourselves. How do we see when that sabotage comes up? Is it, why would anybody listen to me? We have to hear a lot about that in business, right? Why would anybody listen to me? Why does my story matter? Versus I have a lot to offer the world, and by not sharing my story, I could be disservicing someone. So when we're able to shift how we look at something, it creates powerful new thoughts, new roadways, so to speak, and we start to shift how we live, hence increasing our performance, decreasing our anxiety, decreasing our stress, increasing our happiness, truly. So that's where that's my best way to explain where self-sabotage comes from.
Well, it's true, because like you talk about your father and loving him to bits and pieces, but we also created stories, because I remember I had a friend who had an older brother, and he was always like their savior. Yeah, they would get into trouble and the parents wouldn't know, but the older brother would come and take them out of the pickle. I mean, it was like either we broke a window of something or, something. It was just something silly, but he was always that big brother. And I wanted a big brother because my older brother lived with my aunt in another town. So I wanted my big brother. So I found this other fellow that I liked, and I created in my mind the big brother image. Mm-hmm. And I told everybody he's so strong that he could just lift up anybody. Now, it wasn't real, but he happened to be my friend's uncle. And these people, my friend circle on this side, didn't know who he was, but he was pretty tall, about 6'2", and he would just pick us up and just put us on the dresser, right? We were little. So I understand what you're saying. And partly people don't move forward because they have this fear. They have this. So are you telling me that by doing these little exercises, this will support them in going forward and eliminate the fear?
That's a piece of the puzzle. So with, and this is why again, positive intelligence is a framework when I do coaching. I also teach in a course, which is emotional intelligence and mindfulness, because essentially what happens, in many coaching frameworks, and I mean very, reputable coaching frameworks that are out there, what happens, and there's different language. So let's talk about self-sabotage. So there are three parts. Number one, you have to identify how you self-sabotage, or identify your gremlins, or identify your limiting beliefs, or identify your voice of judgment. I mean, there's different ways we can put words to this. So that's the first part of it, is to learn how to identify that, because many people don't. One of the biggest things I hear from the people I work with in both programs, because both programs, my course versus the coaching, is that I never realized how much I judged myself. I never realized how much I judge other people or circumstances a lot. And that's one of the most dangerous ones. People don't realize. They'll say, for example, I gained weight because of COVID. Well, that's not why you gained weight, but people will judge that circumstances and put in place the blame there. So the first thing to shift this is we have to first identify and look this self-saboteur in the eye. And it's like the analogy of, driving a car. You've got all these voices, and I like to call it in one class, and this comes from one of my mentors, that, it's the itty bitty shitty committee that's in our head. And right, that's in our head. And they're all in this car and we're all driving, but who's the driver? Is it your true, authentic, aligned self that you're meant to be? Or it is that avoider driving? It is the judge driving. It is your fear driving. So we want to put these in the back seat, but we can't until we can identify what's showing up for us, and we do work with that. And again, in both programs differently, so that we can identify it, because that's the first step. The second part is then seeing, how do I intercept that and shift? How do I intercept fear and stop it and shift to another perspective? How do I stop that judge and basically saying, no, thank you for your support all these years, but I don't need you today. I'm driving. The third piece are these exercises. And it is essentially building, and again, think of the analogy of going to the gym. If you go to the gym for 3 months and you get, buff and fit and you're all fit, if all of a sudden you stop because you've reached where you want to go, well, then you're going to atrophy. Well, it's the same with our brain. Our brain will, those skills we've learned will atrophy and will shift, will revert back to how we were. So by doing these little exercises, we're actually shifting how our brain is working. And the more we do it and the more consistent we are, the better we're able to show up. And this is back, especially in the last 20 years, by science. And I say this when I say science, whether it's a brain gym, whether we're looking at this as mindfulness, whether we're looking at this as meditation. There's so much neuroscience behind how this is supporting people live better lives, how it's, increasing performance or being happier, so to speak. So when you say, is it those exercises, whether, again, however from whatever lens we're looking at that exercise, that's one piece of the puzzle, but that's what helps us sustain the learning. So many programs, and this is what I feel is different about me, or people who do the work in this way, is many programs look at insight and look at, well, how do we get this wonderful insight of how we do this, but they don't actually work on the muscle part of it. And that's what's the most important part, because nothing will sustain without that. And I'll take another step back. There's research. I'm going to talk about two bits of research out of Harvard, and this has to do with wellness and weight loss. And they say, pretty much all the weight loss programs out there, and I mean reputable ones like Weight Watchers or, the Mediterranean diet or intermittent fasting, or, there's a lot of ways out there. All of these diets or lifestyles, I don't like the word diet, they all work. Given that you don't have any medical conditions, they all work. The problem is that we don't stick to them. The problem isn't the diet. That is the problem. So UC Davis has a wellness center there. I don't know the name of their center, but they wrote this amazing book because all this research they've done, very similar to the research that they did at Harvard, is that same thing. Diets work, my lifestyle works. It's sustainability. And the key to that sustainability, at least what they're finding at UC Davis, it's mindfulness. It's because we are not present. When we're present and we can identify what's happening from the identification work, we're able to choose differently and slowly start to shift our life in all these ways, whether that's staying on a diet, whether that's showing up, whether that's confidence, whether that is sticking to a plan. I mean, there's so much around this, right? But yeah, I hope I'm answering your questions.
And you're right, because if you're talking about weight loss or anything, any habit, because we start doing something in a gist, right? And we were told that 40 days, I was told 40 days, do something for 40 days. If you do it for 40 days, it becomes a habit. But then along the way, we start out with a lot. It's like Coca-Cola, right? When you shake it out, and when you open it, you have so much fizz, and then you leave it for a few hours and it's all flat, because that's what's happening in our life. And so the key is to figure out why the fizz is no longer there.
That's it. 100%. And that's where it's different, where we focus on actually building that mental muscle, building the mental muscle so you can sustain. And that's what's really important. And that's what many people don't do. They don't sustain, and they think, okay, I'm here, so I don't need to do the work anymore. And it's just so incredibly important. It boggles my mind that this isn't more common knowledge, especially because of the neuroscience that's behind this now, that shows how this can support people, not just in performance or increasing sales on a team, but just with reducing stress, reducing anxiety, better relationships, reducing or supporting chronic pain. I mean, there's just so much science behind the benefits. And now I'm talking about the brain building exercises, right? I can't believe it's not more common knowledge.
So share with us 2 tips that you would leave with our people who are listening, and what are the best 2 things that they can do in life every day that would not bog them down, that wouldn't just say, I don't have time for this, and that's easier for them to just implement in their lives.
Okay. So it's hard to give just 2 tips, but I will. And I'm going to say, number 1, if someone's not going to be able to do the work into shifting their shift work, the mindset work, seeing how I self-sabotage, and how I will say, start with mindfulness. And that is, and building your intuitive muscle. And science says the way to build your intuitive muscle are 3 things. Number 1 is journaling. Number 2 is mindfulness. And number 3 is meditation. So when I say tips, I'm going to say, look up or join if you're a woman, you can join my group, because I go into tips every week. Look up mindfulness exercises. And that could be, and I'll give one right now, go for a walk once a week, once a day, 15 minutes. Pick a color. It's called a color walk. Pick a color to focus on versus, the sound of birds or other things. And actually be present in your walk, in the sense that, put one leg in front of the other, feel how your body's shifting, feel how your foot's touching the ground, smell in the air, and focus on one color. So let's say it's red. You're going to only look for red things. It will be amazing. And it always comes back to me. I cannot believe that I just walked in my neighborhood and saw things I've never seen before, because they focused on a color. So there's one tip for mindfulness. But look up everyday mindfulness, because truly, for people who feel that they don't have enough time, and I feel people do, because this actually gives us time back by this practice, okay? Is in everything, in cooking, in washing the dishes, feeling the weight of the water, feeling the temperature of the water, smelling the soap come into your nostrils, taking a deep breath, feeling the dish and how it feels against your skin. Because when we engage our senses, and again, this is the brain building, our brain won't be focusing on other things like worry, like regret, like fear, because we're in that moment, which then helps dissipate those, all of those negative emotions that come up. And that's the idea that in all of this work that we're doing, or at least I'm promoting, it's all about be here now. You need to be in the present. And that's where we live, is in the present, and be ourselves. And that's where courage comes too. You know, it's, oh, I could talk about this for hours.
It's wonderful, you know, because it's the same kind of line of work that I do. You know, all of the words that you're talking about, maybe I say it differently, but it's the same kind of the same path. We're walking in the same forest. So that, you know, it makes sense. It does make sense. But I love the tips that you said. Just focus on one color and feel how your body shifts. I like that. I'm going to start that. You said join your group. What's your group?
So I do have a group on Facebook. It's called Modern Mindfulness. It is a group for women. And I have just built a new schedule. So every Monday morning, I go live with a new tip that you can try that week, something for the busiest of people. So a new mindful exercise or meditation. On Tuesdays and Saturdays, I'll be doing live meditations, whether I am guiding them personally or I'm playing it on record and I'm engaging in it with everybody. And on Thursdays, I will be, and I think I may have mentioned this, and I'd like to invite you. I'm doing my first interview. So Thursdays are wellness interviews, or someone somehow, how it's related to this work, to share with the community, to say, here's another perspective.
That would be awesome. I would love to see that. So I'll look for the link, and then let's do this. But how do people find you?
So right now on Facebook, that's the only platform, unfortunately, I'm on. I'm so busy that I haven't developed that. My website is almost complete, and that's www.CristinaJordin, just as my Facebook name comes up, .com, as well as on Facebook at Cristina Jordin is my Facebook profile name, and my group Modern Mindfulness on Facebook.
Awesome. And so, you know, and the thing is, here you are, ladies and gentlemen. If you are interested in taking it to the next step and you are standing on the sidelines, don't anymore, because what you need to do is just get out and start swimming, jump in the water and take that step, because, you know, you want to be happier. Cristina, you know, she talks about behavior analysis, and sometimes these are words that scare us. But look within us. I mean, we've done so many things that have moved and pushed us forward. I mean, I remember when I was first learning how to drive, I've driven in Africa before, but when I did it here, I literally, you know, I had sweaty hands, and oh my God, the first time I was on a freeway, and my friend and I would go to a school, and we would go the long way to school, but come back on the freeway. And we were so happy that we did that. And we were told, you have to do it 2 ways. You can't just cheat. But we knew the shortcuts, right? So we wouldn't do that. It took us about 7 or 8 months to literally go on the freeway to figure it out. But the thing is, we've all done scary things. We've all done it. And we've come out alive, laughing and kicking, and we've made good memories on that. So if you want to create that in your life, go ahead and start again, you know, and look up Cristina, look up any coach out there who can take you to the next step. Make sure that you connect with her. If you're a woman, you want to join her group, because she's giving out tips every Monday, and I like those tips. Why not? So go ahead and join. You never know who you're going to meet and how you're going to get these ideas. So just take it forward.
Beautiful. Thank you, Munira.
You are welcome. So until next week with another guest, another idea, another perspective, we will come back. And until then, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and share this video with all those people who you think can benefit. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Munira's Musings with your host, Munira Zahabi. If you enjoyed our show, please share and subscribe to this channel. And for more content, please join our Facebook group.